The Electric Company turned after-school phonics into one of television's boldest literacy experiments when it premiered in 1971. It dropped kids into a fast-cut world of sketches, songs, and word games led by Rita Moreno's high-energy personas, Morgan Freeman's easy reader, Bill Cosby's early season segments, Lee Chamberlain's sharp-edged characters, June Angela's short circus performances, and Judy Graubart and Skip Hinnant's chameleon-like turns across countless classroom-friendly comedy bits. Across 780 episodes, 6 seasons, a Grammy-winning cast album, and years of reruns that stretched into the mid-1980s, the series became one of PBS's most ambitious and star-packed projects. Yet behind the psychedelic visuals, booming catchphrases, and bouncing phonics animations was a saga of experimental technology, painful budget choices, reluctant performers, and careers quietly being launched in the corner of an educational TV studio. These are 15 surprising facts about the Electric Company: how it pushed public television's budget to the breaking point, how it hid future icons in plain sight, and how it said goodbye far more quietly than it ever said hello. Stick around for number 15 to see how one performer managed to be there at both the very beginning and the very end. Before we flip the switch, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our deep dives into classic TV that refuses to fade away. Number 1. PBS bet bigger on this reading show than anyone expected. From the outside, the Electric Company looked like another educational show slotted between cartoons and homework. Under the surface, it was one of the most expensive risks PBS had ever taken. The production poured money into elements most children's series never dreamed of. Sets were elaborate, brightly colored environments that could have passed for a major network variety show. The music wasn't filler. It was original composition with full arrangements designed to hook kids' ears rather than fade into the background. On top of that came the cast. Hiring Broadway-level performers and serious character actors for a reading show meant PBS and the Children's Television Workshop weren't cutting corners. They were paying for talent that could hold the attention of restless grade schoolers and their older siblings at the same time. All of this made the Electric Company one of PBS's costliest productions of its era. It was a bold statement that literacy wasn't just a worthy goal, it was worth first-class treatment, and the people behind the show were willing to spend accordingly to prove it. Number 2, 780 episodes couldn't save it from a missing mascot. Between 1971 and 1977, the Electric Company moved at a pace that would daunt even modern streaming giants. In just 6 seasons, the team produced a staggering 780 episodes, and that remarkable output turned the series into a constant presence in American homes. But here's the strange part. By every creative measure, the show was thriving. Teachers used it in classrooms. Kids quoted it on playgrounds. Critics praised it enthusiastically. And yet, somewhere in the Children's Television Workshop's accounting books, the math simply wasn't adding up. The reason had nothing to do with quality. On one side of the ledger was the Electric Company doing exactly what it was designed to do. On the other was Sesame Street, which didn't just teach letters and numbers, it also produced toys, books, records, and a full ecosystem of merchandise that brought in badly needed income year after year. The Electric Company never had that kind of breakout character. No one was rushing to buy Paul the Gorilla lunchboxes or plush consonants for the holidays. So in 1977, the studio shut down new episode production entirely. Reruns stayed on the air until 1985. It was a literacy project ultimately undone by the lack of something as deceptively simple as a marketable mascot. Number 3, a 1972 Grammy made this reading show music industry royalty. Most children's series hope for decent ratings and maybe a bit of critical praise along the way. The Electric Company walked away with a Grammy. In 1972, the original cast album for the show won the Grammy Award for Best Recording for Children. That one wasn't just a nice trophy to display. It was formal recognition from the music industry that what the series was doing with sound and song went well beyond basic sing-alongs designed to fill airtime. The award honored a combination of performers and producers who all brought something exceptional to the project. On the performing side, Lee Chamberlain, Bill Cosby, and Rita Moreno carried the album's vocals and personalities with undeniable force. Behind the scenes, Christopher Surf, Joe Raposo, and Lee Chamberlain shaped the songs into something that could stand entirely on its own as music, not merely as a classroom companion. For Moreno in particular, The Grammy became a career-defining achievement, helping secure her rare and remarkable status as an EGOT winner, someone who has earned an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. A literacy show winning one of music's top honors said something rare about the entire production. The same exacting standards that drove the sketches and visuals were extending all the way into the recording studio sessions. Number 4. The show's most famous visuals came from a house price machine. Long before computers made digital animation commonplace, the Electric Company was bending and twisting words on screen in ways that genuinely felt like science fiction to the viewers watching at home. The show was one of the first productions anywhere to use the Scanimate, an analog video synthesizer capable of warping images in real time. Think of it as a pre-digital special effects machine. You fed in text and graphics and watched them stretch, bounce, and swirl across the monitor in colors that seemed pulled directly from a psychedelic poster. Here's the part most viewers never knew. Each Scanimate system cost more than many houses, and there were only a handful of them operating on the entire planet. The Electric Company hired Dolphin Productions in New York, one of the only facilities equipped to operate the machine, to craft the animations that would turn simple letters into moving, dancing characters. Booking that studio meant standing in line behind major networks and Hollywood film productions, paying premium rates for access to the very same hardware that was later used in sequences for Star Wars. For kids watching at home, the effect was completely mesmerizing. Words weren't just printed on a screen. They came alive, bent into unexpected shapes, and exploded into waves of color. Letters weren't abstract symbols, sitting flat on a page. They were things that could move, react, and play. Number 5. A satirist famous for mocking nuclear war wrote songs about Silent E. If you only knew Tom Lehrer from his sharp comedy songs about politics, religion, and the very real threat of nuclear annihilation, you might not expect to find his fingerprints on a PBS reading show aimed at children. But they are absolutely there, written into 10 memorable pieces of educational music that became some of the show's most beloved segments. Lehrer, famous for razor-edged numbers like the Vatican Rag and his intricate musical catalog of the chemical elements, turned his considerable attention to phonics and grammar for the Electric Company. Instead of attacking hypocrisy or cataloging science, he crafted tunes like Silent E, LY, and the Menu Song. What made him say yes to a children's show? Lehrer himself later explained that he was simply glad somebody had wanted him to use his craft rather than just repeat what he had already done before. For a man who had largely walked away from public performance to teach mathematics at university, the chance to write fresh material for a completely unexpected audience was exactly the right kind of challenge. The wit never disappeared, it just softened around the edges. His Electric Company work feels like his trademark intelligence filtered carefully through the persona of a slightly mischievous teacher. Still sharp and clever, but tuned precisely to an audience far more interested in spelling than satire. Number 6. The "And What About Naomi?" mystery was an inside joke about a future Oscar nominee. For years, one recurring line from the Electric Company hovered over the show like a question that had no answer. At the end of many sketches, the narrator would intone, "And what about Naomi?" with a dramatic gravity that strongly suggested a twist was coming. Then the segment simply ended. Kids were left genuinely wondering who Naomi was. A missing character? A future reveal? A strange inside joke that only the adults in the room truly understood? The show never explained it on air, and the question lingered in viewers' minds long after the credits rolled each afternoon. The truth emerged slowly over the years, and it was far more grounded than any wild fan theory. Naomi was Naomi Foner, an associate producer on the Electric Company during its first 2 seasons. The recurring line was a crew shout-out slipped affectionately into the fabric of the show every time the narrator threw that final question into the air. Foner didn't remain a behind-the-scenes secret forever. She went on to become an Oscar-nominated screenwriter for Running on Empty. And in a twist that connects PBS directly to modern Hollywood, she's the mother of actors Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal. That dangling line turns out to be one of television's most subtle and enduring crew tributes, a tiny mystery for kids at home, and a heartfelt nod to a colleague who would go on to shape serious cinema. Number 7. Paul the Gorilla was named after the show's head writer. Among the show's many recurring bits, Paul the Gorilla stood out as something special. A big, goofy puppet with a genuinely gentle sense of humor, He popped up regularly to play word games and crack jokes that somehow managed to charm kids completely without ever talking down to them. His name wasn't chosen randomly. Paul the Gorilla was named in honor of Paul Dooley, the series' original head writer, whose job was to shape the scripts and sketch concepts that would transform dry literacy goals into something lively and engaging enough to keep children watching day after day. Naming a puppet after him was both a playful wink and a sincere tribute to his foundational contribution. Dooley would later build a respected film career with appearances in movies like 16 Candles and Breaking Away, establishing himself as a consummate character actor. But on the Electric Company, his influence was woven into everything, whether or not his face ever appeared on screen. Thanks to reruns that extended well beyond the show's original 1970s production run, Paul the Gorilla became one of those reliable fixtures of childhood memory, a small, hairy reminder that the people quietly typing away in a back office sometimes leave the most lasting impressions of all. Number 8. The cast was stacked with theater talent no one expected on a kids' show. Look back at the Electric Company's core ensemble, and it reads less like a children's show roster and more like the roll call for a serious and ambitious acting company. Morgan Freeman was there, steadily building the cool, unflappable presence that would one day completely define his celebrated film career. As Easy Reader, he made literacy feel effortlessly stylish, spinning simple sentences with a relaxed authority that stuck permanently in viewers' minds. Rita Moreno brought Broadway and Hollywood experience into every single frame, attacking even the smallest sketch with full-throttle energy and commitment. Years after the show ended, she would tell People magazine about kids yelling her catchphrase at her in school hallways and even in public bathrooms, which was living proof that the work she was doing reached far deeper than anyone on set had ever fully realized. Bill Cosby anchored the first 2 seasons with a kind of broadly appealing family-friendly energy that defined his public persona at the time. Lee Chamberlain added genuine theater credentials, grounding the show's high-concept bits with performances that felt consistently honest rather than exaggerated. Together, they transformed the Electric Company into an informal acting boot camp, a place where seasoned performers and emerging talents alike practiced sketch work, timing, and character building in front of millions of children every single afternoon. Number 9. Morgan Freeman hated every minute of playing Easy Reader. To generations of devoted viewers, Morgan Freeman's presence on the Electric Company is a warm and nostalgic highlight, a calm, charismatic figure making reading look like the smoothest and most natural thing in the world. For Freeman himself, however, those years were far from any kind of dream job. Joan Gans Cooney, one of the show's original creators, later recalled that Freeman genuinely loathed appearing in the Electric Company, describing the entire experience as a very unhappy period in his professional life. Over 4 seasons, he cycled through multiple recurring roles: Easy Reader, the hip book lover, Mel Mounds the laid-back DJ, and Vincent the vegetable vampire, a playful spin on classic horror tropes. It was steady and reliable work, but for a classically trained actor hungry for dramatic material, it also meant long hours endlessly repeating phonics lessons and children's sketches. The costumes, the tightly structured educational requirements, the repetitive nature of the segments, all of it left him deeply restless and professionally frustrated. And yet those very segments kept him financially afloat until the film and television roles that would ultimately define his entire career finally began to arrive. The viewers at home saw a magnetic guide making words feel like a world genuinely worth entering, never once suspecting the creative discomfort of the artist faithfully delivering them. Number 10, "Hey you guys" was a throwaway line that became a defining 1980s catchphrase. Few moments from the Electric Company are as instantly recognizable as Rita Moreno bursting onto the screen, throwing her arms dramatically wide and shouting, "Hey you guys," with everything she had. It felt like a genuine sonic jolt, a clear signal that the quieter rhythms of other educational programming were finished and the high-energy literacy lesson was about to begin in earnest. What makes it even more remarkable is that the moment was never scripted. Moreno improvised the shout completely during filming, a spontaneous attempt to grab audience attention, and immediately set the right tone. The producers recognized instantly that it worked on every level. They built the series opening around her booming greeting across multiple seasons, turning a single unplanned impulse into an iconic, defining ritual. Over time, the phrase escaped the bounds of PBS entirely and became one of the most quoted lines in 1980s cinema, echoing in an entirely new context that many of the kids using it never traced back to its original source. A literacy show on public television had accidentally created a piece of genuine pop culture language that would comfortably outlive its original sketches. Number 11. Before global fame, Irene Cara was singing phonics songs in the Short Circus. Long before fame and Flashdance, What a Feeling turned Irene Cara into a worldwide star, she was already part of the Electric Company's youthful musical engine. As a young performer, Cara joined the Short Circus, the show's energetic in-house singing group, appearing in Season 1 in songs and sketches designed to make reading feel like pure entertainment. Most young viewers had absolutely no way of knowing that the girl enthusiastically helping them sound out words would soon be headlining major films and recording songs that defined an entire decade's sense of possibility and aspiration. By 1980, she was starring in Fame. 3 years later, Flashdance, What a Feeling earned her an Oscar and gave the early 1980s one of its most enduring anthems, a remarkable journey that began on a PBS soundstage. Number 12. Willy Wonka's Violet Beauregarde joined the Short Circus the year after turning Blueberry. Denise Nickerson had already secured her permanent place in film history as the gum-chewing, blueberry-bound troublemaker in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory before joining the Electric Company. In Season 2, she became part of the Short Circus, creating an unexpected crossover for kids who recognized her from both worlds. Her run lasted a single season, but for viewers who grew up with both productions, her presence built a small and memorable bridge between two very different corners of 1970s childhood culture. Number 13. Breaking Bad's Gus Fring sang on the theme song as a child. Before Giancarlo Esposito ever inhabited the chilling, controlled menace of Gus Fring, he was one young voice among many in a children's chorus celebrating the power of reading. As a child, Esposito participated in recording the Electric Company's opening theme, the song promising to turn it on and bring viewers the power. The same precision and quiet intensity that would later make his television performances so deeply unsettling were already present, simply deployed in a radically different and far more cheerful context. Somewhere inside that bright, bouncing opening sequence is a future television kingpin hiding comfortably in harmony. Number 14. The series finale was so understated that most viewers didn't even realize it was the end. When the Electric Company concluded its original run in 1977, there was no elaborate farewell, no emotional stunt, and no grand gesture. The final episode simply brought back original cast members Judy Graubart, Skip Hinnant, and Morgan Freeman, using familiar and trusted faces to quietly ground the goodbye. The show let its longtime performers do exactly what they had always done: guide children through language with humor, warmth, and ease. It played like one more regular episode, just slightly more reflective and gently aware that the lights were finally about to dim for good. Number 15. Judy Graubart was the first face on screen, and the last one standing 6 years later. Judy Graubart's connection to the Electric Company runs deeper than almost any viewer ever fully appreciated. She wasn't simply another member of a talented ensemble. She formed the complete and deliberate bookends of the entire series. In 1971, when the show premiered, Graubart was the first performer audiences encountered in the very first sketch of the very first episode. 6 years later, when the series aired its final episode, she was still there, quietly closing out a run that had begun the day the whole extraordinary experiment started. Through every cast change, format shift, and evolving educational priority, she remained a steady and reliable constant. She may not be the most famous name the show produced, but her start-to-finish presence makes her arguably its most important figure, a quiet, unshakable anchor in a production built entirely on noise, motion, and relentless reinvention. Thanks for watching these 15 surprising and genuinely heartfelt facts about the Electric Company. Which revelation hit hardest? The inside joke buried in "And what about Naomi?" The reluctant years Morgan Freeman endured as easy reader? Or simply the idea that a children's reading show once walked away with a Grammy? If revisiting this neon-lit slice of educational television reminded you just how genuinely ambitious those after-school hours really were, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments which electric company moment or performer still lives clearly in your memory all these years later. And until next time, keep watching back before.